Kawaki is going to kill Ada in a final ditch attempt to blow away all of the Mamushi in Konoha. And while that might sound crazy, I'm only saying this because I recently came to the conclusion that every single one of my Boruto predictions is wrong. Or at least I now believe that they will be. See, we've been dedicating a ton of airtime on this channel recently to trying to hypothesize what the future of Boruto is going to hold. Trying to crack the code on why Boruto is seemingly still in charge of his body in his final battle against Kawaki, trying to figure out why Kashin Koji seems so concerned at the end of chapter 29, trying to unlock the safe that holds the answer to the question of how was Konoha destroyed. And over the course of these several attempts I've made trying to figure out what's going to happen in Boruto, I feel as though I've come up with some really good hypotheses. That was until this morning. See, because this morning I got what I like to refer to as a masterclass email. An email so good that I can basically just use it as a video with no real changes of my own. And considering the fact that I only really get 2 or 3 of these emails a year, it's a special occasion. See, because just this morning, I got an email from somebody by the name of Gengetsu, who posited a theory to me that has completely redefined how I think about the future of Boruto entirely. And now, after reading this damn near 1,000-word email, I realize there might be some people out there who are simply better at theorizing than me, but thank God I'm louder than them. See, because this all-encompassing email that was sent to me not only reveals in a perfect fashion the possible future of both Ada and Daemon, but it also explains how Boruto and Kawaki end up facing off against each other atop a ruined Konoha, hints at the possible refiring of Omnipotence, ties up the Sarada Sumire and Ada arc, and introduces Shibai into the Boruto story in a way that doesn't feel Kaguya-esque. That is to say, for me to begin to try and explain to you how all-encompassing this theory is about the end of Boruto's story is almost impossible without a full-length video on it. If there is a lingering question left in Boruto's timeline right now, this theory answers it. But if I had to summarize the theory in just one line, I'd say Kawaki is going to kill Ada. So hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, because today we got a doozy. Because today we're talking I was wrong about everything in Boruto. But before we get to talk about the things that I don't know, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the 4th wall link in my description below. Jiraiya's training Naruto, and you know, there's some arcs we need to forget. Boy, oh boy, if you want to see me squirm, do I have some episodes for you? Naruto's too good at like seducing old men, and I don't like that he has that ability. So as we all know from chapter 29 of Two Blue Vortex, the Mamushi invasion of Konoha is in full effect. And while things are looking slightly optimistic for Team Boruto, as Boruto, Kawaki, and even Team 10 have shown the ability to wipe out these Mamushi, Rinnegan very much included, Kashin Koji at the end of chapter 29 seems rather perturbed. And a couple of days ago, we posted a video theorizing about why Kashin Koji would seem as upset as he is, considering the fact that this operation is seemingly going so well. And over the course of that video, we talked about a couple of different possibilities, all of which we said were pretty close to each other in terms of likelihood, but apparently one of the possibilities that I talked about in that video piqued the interest of our emailer today, Gengetsu, when I said that one of the reasons that Kashin Koji is possibly looking so concerned at the end of chapter 29 is because the Mamushis aren't getting dumb enough. See, because Mamushi has one weakness and one weakness alone. The more copies of himself he makes, the dumber those copies get. But seemingly Mamushi hasn't hit the critical threshold to start making his copies dumb yet, on account of the fact that he is still making incredibly wise tactical decisions. But this begs the question, will Mamushi ever make enough clones of himself to trigger the pack mentality of all of the clones beating to swarm the same location? And if Mamushi does ever reach that critical threshold, who amongst Team Boruto has enough firepower to wipe out that many Shinju with one fell swoop attack? And mind you, every single one of these Mamushi needs to be wiped out completely. Or at the very least, all of their Rinnegan need to be destroyed. But if you want to destroy the Rinnegan of 50 or so Mamushi, your best bet outside of some kind of eye-level ghost ship attack is to erase every single one of these Mamushi on a cellular level. You want to turn every Mamushi to dust. But who amongst Team Boruto has the ability to do that? Well, let's run down the list of the most powerful combatants in Team Boruto right now. Obviously, at the very tippy top of that list is Boruto, right? However, while Boruto has shown off some incredibly powerful techniques like his Rasengan Uzuhiko Boruto, which hypothetically has an infinite amount of power that it can tap into so long as Boruto gets enough time to plant his feet into the ground, we still haven't really seen the upper bounds of what the Rasengan Uzuhiko can accomplish. And in order to create a Rasengan Uzuhiko to completely wipe out 50 or so Mamushi, Boruto would have to charge up his power for a spirit bomb-esque amount of time, which may not be an opportunity that's afforded to him considering the fact that he's going to be trying to kill 50 or so Mamushi. By the way, the 50 number is arbitrary, but like I feel as though that's where we're going to get to. Okay, but what about Himawari? She's basically a tailed beast at this point. And like, yeah, she is. And like, yeah, she's able to fire tailed beast bombs, and a tailed beast bomb could absolutely wipe out 50 or so clustered together Mamushi. However, in the lead up to this battle against Mamushi, there's been the repeated talking point that Himawari hasn't been able to tap into the entirety of Kurama's power at all. And even though she showed significant promise in the battle against Jura, we haven't necessarily seen her live up to her hype yet. And that's not saying that she won't at some point, but in the one training session we've seen Himawari have since her battle against Jura, Kurama very vocally expressed his discontent with her training and her growth. So to assume that she's gonna be able to pull off some attack so powerful that it can wipe out all of the Mamushi, well, I don't know, might seem like kind of a stretch. Her tailed beast bombs seem more like Jura's tailed beast bombs in the fact that they are more sniper adjacent than explosion adjacent. Okay, well then what about Sarada? She's able to control black holes with Hirame. And yeah, she is. However, we haven't seen Sarada train in her usage of the MS since her battle against Ryu. And there's no real reason to assume that Sarada has more chakra than she had in her battle against Ryu, so she can only use Hirame once. And while maybe, yes, there is the possibility that she could make a tiny black hole, because the smaller her black hole, the stronger it pulls things in, and she could select all of the Mamushi and pull all of the Mamushi into that black hole, like a Jibaku Tensai, going from wiping out just one Shinju to 50 or so Shinju would be kind of a crazy step up in power for Sarada. However, there is one combatant amongst Team Boruto who has rather consistently shown the ability to drum up massive amounts of offensive firepower in mere instants, and that one combatant is Kawaki. Kawaki time and time again, whether it was his battle against Garo, Boruto, or Jura, has shown the ability to create massive blasts of power beams that wipe out any and everything that has the misfortune of coming into contact with them. And these power beams are only going to get stronger with the stronger that Kawaki gets. And Kawaki has reached such a level of power that when he hit Jura with this blast of power in the battle that Boruto and Kawaki had against Jura just a couple of chapters ago, Jura was not only forced to block the beam with his tree roots, but also to heal his body. And mind you, since that moment, Kawaki has gotten more powerful, with his body now literally brimming to its limits with power. And thus, out of everybody in Team Boruto, with the possible exception of Sarada, Kawaki seems to be the most likely candidate to deal the final blow to all of the grouped together Mamushi. Tie this into the fact that narratively, at least according to Ada, Kawaki should be the person protecting Ada, and it would make sense that Kawaki should be the person to deal the final blow to Mamushi, the person trying to kill Ada. But I don't think that's how it's gonna go. See, obviously, yes, right now Mamushi is making good tactical decision. He's not getting bogged down in fights he doesn't need to be in. He's making sure that there's still copies of him around Konoha that are able to separate into new copies. He's keeping himself spread out and sweeping across the village in a grid-like pattern. Every decision he's making right now is the right one. However, many people out there believe that every single one of the Shinju are supposed to represent a different kind of love. And the type of love that Mamushi is supposed to represent is that of lust. And out of all of the kinds of love, lust makes us do the craziest things. And thus I've theorized that even though Mamushi is making the right decisions right now, when Ada's location does become apparent to Mamushi, this is most likely when Mamushi will split out of control and trigger his hive mind grouping mentality. He will ensure, most likely because of the threat of Daemon, that there is enough copies of him that Daemon's reflectability isn't able to stop him from getting his grubby little mitts on Ada. See, because, and this is something we talked about in the Kashin Koji is worried video, Mamushi is kind of a nightmare setup for Daemon in a battle to protect Ada, as Daemon's reflectability only works against people who are actively targeting him. And thus, while Daemon might be able to use his reflectability on a couple of Mamushi, if there is 50 or so swarming his location, a bunch of them can just aim at Ada, and he won't be able to put himself between that Mamushi and Ada infinitely. And therefore, the simple-minded convergence of all of the Mamushi will probably only happen when Ada's location becomes apparent to one of them. And in that moment, Gengetsu, and now I, believe that Kawaki will blow away Mamushi and Ada. See, we learned at the beginning of the Mamushi invasion that Shikamaru told all of the teams involved in the Mamushi repelling to be ready to move to Sector East A at a moment's notice. Now, considering the fact that Mamushi is trying to find Ada, it's highly likely that this is where Ada is currently being hidden, or just where Ada's house is. As we know, Ada has a house in the hills for some reason. On top of this, we know that Shikamaru is about to be interrogated by Lord Hoku for his possible connection to Boruto's escape. Now, obviously, this interrogation comes at a deeply inconvenient time, because Shikamaru is currently coordinating the effort to repel Mamushi with a bunch of people that Konoha's elders and Lord Hoku would probably identify as traitors. And thus, Shikamaru is placed in a situation where either he has to run afoul of the Fire Daimyo and possibly risk his position as the Hokage, or walk away from the operation that is actively trying to stop one of Konoha's most important assets from being eaten by a Shinju. And thus it's highly likely that as the tactical leader of this operation, if Shikamaru is knocked over, that Mamushi will get a leg up in this battle in terms of finding Ada's location. And thus it seems as though over the course of the next couple of chapters, one of the key things that Kashin Koji is worried about is exactly this. See, now that Team Boruto is no longer being coordinated by the 200 IQ of Shikamaru, there's a fair to decent chance that one of the Mamushi will be able to find Ada's location. And once one of the Mamushi is able to find Ada's location, all of the Mamushi will begin to swarm, possibly faster than any individual member of Team Boruto is able to stop. And thus Kawaki, who's probably either tied for or the fastest person in Konoha right now, will realize as all of the Mamushi are swarming towards Ada's location, that A, there is an opportunity in all of these Mamushis being close together, and B, that he has the capacity to end this fight with one cold and calculated decision. See, while Daemon is inevitably thrown into the flame of trying to fight off an infinitely reproducing Mamushi, regardless of the efforts of Daemon, all the Mamushi as they close in on Ada's location will be within the confines of one blast from Kawaki, especially with this new highly amped AP. And here's the thing, if Daemon is within the confines of this blast, there's also a fair to decent possibility that this blast could affect him. See, like we talked about in this video and in other videos, Daemon's reflectability only works when there is intent involved. So if hypothetically Kawaki isn't aiming at Daemon and is rather aiming at the army of swarming Shinju, there's a possibility that Daemon being swept up in this blast will not cause for his reflect to take effect. And thus this might be narratively the only opportunity that anybody in Naruto has to take out Daemon. But considering the fact that we haven't seen the teased fight between Daemon and Himawari just quite yet, I also believe that there is a likelihood that Daemon survives this event. But if Ada dies, what does this mean for Boruto's plot? Will the omnipotence that she's fired off be reversed the second that she dies, and Boruto will return to his role as the Hokage's son and Kawaki the traitor? Well, no. We actually learned in chapter 80 of part 1 of Boruto that even if Ada dies, omnipotence is still gonna be around. Ada simply acted as the trigger for the firing of omnipotence. She doesn't need to maintain it, she made it happen, and now that it's happened, it can't unhappen. And that's actually all the more reason that she's probably going to die. See, because effectively the only way to undo omnipotence that we know of right now would be to fire some kind of reversed omnipotence. A hypothetical situation that Sarada Sumire and Ada were talking about at the beginning of Two Blue Vortex. Now, they said they were going to entertain this possibility on account of the fact that they have no idea what could happen if they tried to use omnipotence again, and the reality they could make could be even more scuffed than the one they're living in right now. However, even though they said they weren't going to do it, if Ada dies, well, that door shuts forever. But rather interestingly, over the course of Two Blue Vortex, we began to see Ada and really everybody stray away from Kawaki. Mitsuki, over the course of just one conversation with Boruto, realized that Kawaki wasn't his son, and Ada has become less and less vocal about her feelings for Kawaki. But why? Well, one, because Kawaki's annoying and mean, and two, because everybody else is finding the fulfillment they were trying to get from Kawaki elsewhere. Mitsuki got the fulfillment of finding his son once again over the course of his conversation with Boruto, and Ada, whose charm Shinjutsu is literally a byproduct of wanting to be liked by others, realized that the two people that were unaffected by her charm Shinjutsu actually like her for who she is, in Sarada and Sumire. And considering the fact that the conversation that Sarada, Sumire, and Ada all had together not only established all three of them care about each other, but also that all three of them have no ill will towards each other, it seems as though over the course of Two Blue Vortex, Ada has begun begun to find the connection she's been yearning for in Sarada and Sumire, as opposed to Kawaki, which is actually really refreshing in the Naruto universe. Like, Ada's not dependent on a man to make her feel good about herself. If only we got this kind of character arc for Sakura. However, we are emotionally distancing Ada and Kawaki, as it seems that we are. That means that in the end of the story, she hypothetically doesn't have to be around to be a love interest for Kawaki. And well, obviously, there's a ton of other reasons that she could be kept in the story outside of being a love interest for Kawaki. That's one less reason for her to be around. All that is to say, narratively, the further we head into Two Blue Vortex, the less relevant that Ada is. Her omnipotence can only be fired on accident. Her Senrigan isn't actively being used on the Shinju on account of the fact that Mamushi has a counter to it, and her friendship arc with Sarada and Sumire is, well, kind of wrapped up. And thus, really, it's just Mamushi's obsession with Ada that's keeping her plot relevant. And what happens in Naruto when you're a ridiculously powerful character who's no longer plot relevant? Well, you die. But Ada's death has the capacity to be something beautiful. See, in Ada's last moments, as she realizes that Kawaki's about to blast her away alongside all of the Mamushi that are trying to consume her, she could finally make one conscious wish for herself. A conscious wish that abandons the world that she made for Kawaki as she realizes that he was never the answer to all of her problems, and rather a conscious wish that brings about a world that the two girls that genuinely love her for being her need and want. That is to say that in Ada's final moments, as a beam of power flew towards her, she could fire off another blast of omnipotence that undoes the first one. A blast of omnipotence that tells the entire world that it is Kawaki who is the traitor, and not Boruto. See, Boruto has never done wrong by Ada. In fact, Boruto has been highly respectful of Ada, and Ada to Boruto. And if Ada wanted to help out the only two people that have ever had a genuine connection with her in her entire life, with the last moments of her life, she could make a world where the man that the two of them love is able to return to the village he was born into. Not only would this offer a bittersweet conclusion to Ada's story, as in her final moments, she was finally able to make her own wish come true, making a better world for the only people that had ever shown her real, genuine kindness, but it would also set the stage perfectly for what a lot of people anticipate to be the final battle of Boruto, which is Kawaki versus Boruto. But what if this battle isn't the final battle of Boruto? See, yes, narratively, all of the lines that we're able to draw between Naruto and Boruto make us believe that a battle between the two main characters has to be the last fight of this story, but we've been trying to figure out for weeks now why Boruto was still in control of his body in the battle against Kawaki if this is truly the final battle of Boruto. Because if it is the final battle of Boruto, well then Momoshiki should be in charge of Boruto's body. But what if this isn't the final battle of Boruto? And what if the battle that we saw foreshadowed all the way back in episode in chapter 1 is much closer than any of us even could begin to anticipate? See, as we've stated a couple of times on this chapter already, the Jogan doesn't seem to be popping up in the manga anytime soon. And therefore, while there is absolutely the prospect that it will pop up at some point and Boruto will use that power to suppress Momoshiki forever, for the moment, Boruto's using a Byakugan in his right eye, which makes it seem as though he's using the Byakugan in his battle against Kawaki in chapter in episode 1, which would lead us to the conclusion that in this battle against Kawaki, all of the Shinju have yet to be defeated. And if we consider the opening remark of Boruto in this battle against Kawaki, I didn't believe you would go this far, that does kind of seem like something that Boruto would say to Kawaki after he just literally blew Ada away. On top of this, if prior to blowing Ada away, Kawaki was flying around Konoha trying to blast as many of the Mushi away as possible, that could explain how Konoha had reached such a ridiculously ruined state. Tie that into the fact that if in Ada's final moments she did fire off an omnipotence that undid the previous one, everybody in Konoha would instantly be reminded that Kawaki is the bad guy, and therefore we should round up every single ninja in the village and go capture him. Something that he really would not like. Because if he were to be captured, especially by the forces of Konoha, he would never have an opportunity to kill Boruto and Momoshiki. And therefore he would never have an opportunity to release Naruto out of the Daikokuten, meaning that everything he had done up until this moment was for naught. On top of that, if the firing of omnipotence told everybody that Naruto was floating in a timeless dimension controlled by Kawaki, well then the incentive to put some handcuffs on him becomes even more powerful. On top of that, there is a second piece of evidence to prove the idea that maybe this isn't the final fight of Boruto in this battle between Boruto and Kawaki. And that is the fact that Boruto, prior to beginning to clash blades with Kawaki, redons his ninja headband. And while he does so, he tells Kawaki that the age of ninja is not over because he is still one. Now, outside of the fact that it's just a very cool moment, this could also be a visual indicator that Boruto has rejoined the side of Konoha. Boruto redonning his Konoha headband could be a nod to the fact that Konoha now wants him back on their side. He is a son of Konoha, and thus he must don his headband once again. On top of this, the idea of Kawaki talking about the age of shinobi being over would make sense if Kawaki just spent a fair amount of time wiping out the majority of the fighting force of Konoha, as every single one of the ninja that came to try to defeat Kawaki would be repelled by his ridiculously newly amped power. And thus Kawaki, after fighting back the majority of Konoha's fighting forces, could have come to the conclusion that he and he alone is the only person that Konoha needs to protect itself. On top of that, when you consider the fact that the Ada is most likely located in the northern part of Konoha, one, because Shikamaru told everybody to get ready to go to the northern part of Sector B or something, and two, because Ada has been displayed to live up in the hills, and we know that the hills that surround Konoha are towards the northern part of Konoha where the stone faces are. It would make sense that the majority of the destruction that we saw in the lead up to Boruto and Kawaki's fight would happen around the stone faces, which are in the northern part of Konoha, where Ada is most likely living right now. And on top of all this, if Omnipotence was fired once again, it would also have the added benefit of allowing Shikamaru to break free of the interrogation by the Fire Daimyo. See if Shikamaru can talk to Lord Hoku and the Fire Daimyo and the elders and say, listen, I always knew that Boruto wasn't guilty, and that's why I was doing what I was doing. They'd really have no other choice but to be like, yeah, no, fair. Ties in the fact that Naruto would be revealed to be not actually dead, and that Kawaki was the true criminal the entire time, and it's fair to say that the attention of the Fire Daimyo, Lord Hoku, and the elders would be shifted to Kawaki, and not Boruto, Mitsuki, and Shikamaru. But this brings about the interesting point that this final battle against Kawaki can't be the final battle of Boruto. It would simply leave too many hanging plot threads. This ending gives us no answer for what's happening with Amado and Akebi, and never introduces Shiba into the story as a final bad guy, and listen, maybe he never will be introduced, but I believe it's highly likely that he will be, and more than anything, it mirrors the ending of Naruto much too closely. And while yes, there has been a huge amount of similarities between Naruto's story and Boruto's, I'd like to believe that Ikimoto isn't writing a hollow copy of Naruto, because up until this moment, he really hasn't been. And rather, I believe this battle between Boruto and Kawaki is meant to be a kind of climax. A climax of their antagonistic headbutting that opens the door to the two of them growing alongside each other, and Kawaki's slow slog back into the general goodwill of Konoha as a village, and the majority of Kawaki trying to win back the goodwill of Konoha after being re-accepted into its arms, much in the same way that Naruto re-accepted Kawaki back into his arms every single time Kawaki stumbled, will revolve around the idea of Konoha battling it out with Shiba, much like how Sasuke was redeemed by helping Konoha in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. But what do I know? I literally admitted at the beginning of this video that all of my theories were wrong. But what do you guys think? Do you think there's a possibility that Kawaki will kill Ada? Do you think the battle we saw between Kawaki and Boruto will be the final battle of this manga? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to pack for a month in Asia.